Now today we're going to start a new sermon series which we've simply entitled The Way of Wisdom. And we're going to be looking at various texts and wisdom nuggets from the book of Proverbs. Life is about the journey and not the destination. You've probably heard that or read this pick-me-up line before, right? You see it in self-help books, on people who talk about mindfulness. You'll find it in quotable quotes by millennials, by Gen Zers, even by boomers. It's attributed to Emerson, although I read somewhere that it's not true. There are artists who have sang it like Aerosmith and Miley Cyrus. So they say life is about the journey and not the destination. And if you think about it, the quote sounds very logical, right? Because in many ways, we have this tendency to focus too much on the outcome. So naturally, the idea that we should try to appreciate the path that we're on while we are on it makes very good sense, right? Enjoy the journey, so to speak, because it's the little things that makes life worth living. Stop to smell the roses. Appreciate the scenery, right? Now, on the other hand, I do want to point out as well that a journey is not a journey without a destination. Someone once said the destination matters even though the journey makes it all worthwhile. Now, if you read from Paul in the New Testament, he uses images of athletic events, speaking of those who train hard with a goal of winning. So it's one thing to enjoy the journey while we are on it, but if we are on a journey without a destination, there will come a time when we realize that this is not going anywhere, right? Now think about it this way. If I get into my car and I begin to drive, somewhere along the way, I will come across an intersection. And I have to make a decision whether I'm going to turn left, or to turn right, or to go straight. Now, here's a question. How do I make that decision? The answer is very simple. It all depends on where I want to go. Diba? Because roads lead to places. Roads lead to places. Andy Stanley in his book, The Principle of the Path, talks about this. And he has this quotable quote. He says, your direction, not your intention, determines your destination. It says, your direction determines your destination. Now, that's kind of straightforward, isn't it? It's simple, and yet it should cause us to think a little bit more deeply, because he's really not talking about which way we should turn in order for us to buy our coffee or fill up our car with gasoline. He's talking about life direction. He's saying your life direction determines your destination. And so this New Year series, which we're calling The Way of Wisdom, we're going to take a look at a couple of wisdom nuggets from the book of Proverbs that will help us not just to make the journey worthwhile, but also the destination clear for us. So think about direction, whether we turn left or turn right or go straight, whatever. Now in Proverbs, you're going to notice something that occurs quite often. And it talks about certain paths. It talks about ways that we take. It talks about the direction that we take in life. Because here's the thing. It might seem that life is made up of hundreds of random, disconnected choices. But you know what? Make enough choices over a long period of time, and suddenly you will discover that you have created a well-worn path. Brothers and sisters, you and I are traveling on a road, right? Think about it this way. Every day we choose a way. And we need to be careful which road we are on, because roads lead to places. Roads lead somewhere. Let me show you in Proverbs chapter 4, which is really still part of the introduction of Proverbs. Here, as we have read earlier, you see a kind of a father figure trying to plead with his son. And he's saying, listen to me. He's trying to tell him, pay attention to me. And I want you to observe the words way and the words path as they appear in these verses. Proverbs 4:11 says, I guide you in the way of wisdom and lead you along straight paths. Then a couple of verses later he says, in verse 14, do not set foot on the path of the wicked or walk in the way of evil man. So this father is urging this young man and saying, you know what, you've got to listen to me. Pay attention to this. There are some people in this world, they are going in directions that are radically different from the direction that you need to go. And they're going to end up in destinations that you don't want to be in. They have a path. They have a road that they're taking. Later on in verse 26, he says, make level paths for your feet and take only ways that are firm. Do you see it? All through Proverbs 4, he talks about your way, your path, your way. See, life is really not hundreds of different, disconnected, random choices. Because after a while, there will appear a well-worn path. And we find ourselves on that road. Roads lead to places. Roads lead somewhere. And that's why we commonly say or use this phrase, the way. You know the way he treats his wife. Or you know the way she reacts to her husband. Or you've seen the way they parent. You know the way she reacts when someone tries to give her correction. We talked about the way, we are saying, right? Because we have seen in that person decisions in life where they have started creating this path, this road. And when we see that, we understand that the road that they are taking becomes fairly predictable. Diba? And so we can talk about the way we deal with our finances, the way we talk about the people that are not around, the way we treat people who are not like us, or the way we use our time, the way we choose our friends, the way we respond to somebody's advice. You see, life is really not hundreds of incidental, disconnected choices, enough decisions in a row, and we find ourselves in a well-worn path, in a way, a road. And roads lead to places. Roads lead somewhere. Every day, we choose a way. Every day, you and I choose a way. And let me just pause here right now. As we face 2021, and as we think about the past year, 2020, on the heels of the COVID pandemic, can I ask you, what road have you been on? Spiritually, physically, relationally, in your conversations with your friends, with colleagues at work, with your classmates in school, if you're a student. What road have you been on? What road have you taken when it comes to your relationship with the Father? So today we're going to have an opportunity to dive into some of these proverbs. What if we talk about some of the roads that we take and where the roads will lead? Because we need to be careful what road we take. Every road leads somewhere. Now, if you have read Proverbs before, you'd probably notice that it covers many, many areas of life, right? You'll find things about business, how you treat others, character issues like laziness or anger. But today, since this is an introduction sermon, right, I'm going to speak about 3 life issues where I believe we make decisions every day. Every day, we respond to them either in a way that is wise or a way that is foolish. And these three areas I want to talk about today is in the area of our words, our friends, and our time. Every day, we make decisions in these areas. And I want you to take a moment to evaluate the road that you're taking and the direction that you are headed as we look into these three areas. So the first one is the path that we take in relation to our words. Our words. Now, Proverbs has a lot to say about what we say. You will find the words tongue, mouth, lips, words. They occur almost 150 times in Proverbs. So on average, that's about 5 times for every chapter. Let's look at a couple of them, okay? Let's look at Proverbs 12:18. Here it says, reckless words pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise bring healing. And there's this little sword toy that we have in the house made of foam. So if I'm going to hit you with that sword, we'll just say, okay, right? But it's interesting here that the writer of Proverbs uses the sword as an image of reckless words. Seems harsh, right? Seems extreme. Reckless words pierce like a sword. They lacerate, they stab you, they slit, they puncture. Why can't you do anything right? How could you be so dumb? Didn't you understand what I said? Do you think money grows on trees? Why did you spend it like that? You're so immature. No, reckless words. They slash, they stab, they penetrate deep. And we have seen many instances in our families, in our workplaces, where people suffer from reckless words because they pierce like a sword. But there's a flip side in the proverb. The rest of the verse says, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Now in Proverbs, you will actually see this feature that theologians call parallelism. The writer will put two ideas side by side, and that they would either complement one another or compare or complete each other. So here it's like you're in the fork, you're at a fork in the road. And in the area of your words, the writer is saying, which road are you gonna take? Or maybe if you're evaluating yourself, you might wanna ask, which road am I taking? Because one road leads to destruction and the other road leads to healing. And you and I are called to take the path of healing, right? Never underestimate the power of words. I'm so proud of you. Whenever I see the work that you do, I am so encouraged because I see a lot of energy, a lot of creativity put into it. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. Can you help me out? Wise words, they bring healing instead of destruction. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have let my emotions, get in the way. Please, I need you to forgive me. Every day we choose a way. And after a while, we create a well-worn path with our words. It can either be a path that's marked by destruction or a path that is marked by healing. And when it comes to our words, the writer of Proverbs calls us to consider the best way to say what needs to be said. Now, we don't live in a perfect world, right? And sometimes we have to say some things that are not pleasant to say. So our words carry more weight if we take the effort to say them well. Proverbs 15 verse 23 says, a man finds joy in giving an apt reply. And how good is a timely word. It takes a lot of effort to make sure that we say the right thing in the right way, doesn't it? And there's a story of a man who fixed his wife a sandwich. And One of the pieces of the bread he used was the heel of the bread. You know what the heel of the bread is? I think you can see it in this photo. And when he gave her the sandwich, kanang tumoy sa bread ba? She blew up and she said, I'm so sick of you giving me the heel of every sandwich you make. You've been doing this for 20 years. Why do you insist on doing this to me every time? And the husband looked at his wife and said quietly, because the heel is my favorite piece. And I want you to have the best part. Now, which person do you relate to? To the one who just blurts out the words without thinking, or to the one who quietly responds? Solomon says in Proverbs 15 verse 1, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Sometimes we need to confront our spouse or our child or an employee or a friend. We need to take the time to find the right way to go about saying what needs to be said. We need to ask ourselves, how can I say this in such a way that will build them up, will encourage them to do what is best for them? A woman once said, my husband has a way of telling me to do something, and it makes me want to do the exact opposite. You have persons like that in your life. They tell you something. I think this happens with parents and kids, right? The mom says something to the child, and the child just wants to do the exact opposite. Perhaps you're the child, perhaps you're the parent, whatever place you're in, maybe you and I need to think about how we better communicate in a more gentler manner. It's important to look for the best way to say what needs to be said. Now, Proverbs has more to say about the words we say. I just touch on the surface. There's the issue of gossip and slander. There's when we make self-promotions or anger and arguments and saying too much while actually saying too little. And you will find a lot of these nuggets of wisdom as you read through Proverbs this month. Now, here's a reflection. So here's the question. How often do your words encourage? How often do your words encourage? Consider, for instance, the past month. How many times have you encouraged your spouse or your child or your loved one or your friends or your co-workers or your employees? May I suggest that we look for opportunities in the next few days, right? Just to build up those around us with genuine words of affirmation, maybe words of encouragement or words of appreciation. Because every day we choose a way. And when we learn to choose the right way, they will form a well-worn path. A path that leads to a road, because roads lead to places, roads lead somewhere. Now, I would just like to ask you right now, is it possible that today would be the day that you get on a better road when it comes to your words? Okay, so that's the first one. Now, let's look at the second area and the path that we are taking when it comes to our friends. Our friends. Now, here's the thing. In Proverbs, the deal about friendship is this, that friends tend to rub off on one another. So the call is for us to be very careful about who we are spending a lot of time with. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 24 says, do not make friends with a hot-tempered man. Do not associate with one easily angered. You might want to ask why. The next verse finishes. It says in verse 25, or you may learn his ways and get yourself ensnared. So he's telling us, be careful what friendships you form, because your friends tend, Well, because friends tend to rub off on one another. If you have a friend in your inner circle, in your group, who is highly volatile, it's possible he's really gonna influence you. If you hang out with people who are constantly complaining, constantly criticizing, you know what? You will find yourself beginning to constantly complain and criticize as well. The values that your friends have eventually becomes your values. If you have a friend who likes to do a lot of things that are ungodly, eventually you will do the same. You're gonna pick it up. Now, this isn't the only Proverbs that talks about friendship this way. Proverbs 13, verse 20 says, "He who walks with the wise grows wise, but a companion of fools suffer harm." Now, how many times have you heard the phrase, "he got mixed up with the wrong crowd"? Right? Happens too many times. Like it or not, we tend to be chameleons. We tend to act like the people we are with, and sooner or later, we tend to take on their values. Now, in 1 Corinthians, look at what Paul says. He says, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." You know, the word misled there is really true. Because a lot of us, when we hear somebody say, or when we hear the Bible, when we hear somebody talk about our friends, we say what? Ay, okay ra na. Okay ra na. That's why Paul says, do not be misled. Because we think it's okay ra. But whoever you're close to, whoever you bring into your inner circle will have an influence in your life. And Paul is saying, do not be misled. Dili siya okay ra. In other words, now I hope that this part of the message will challenge you in at least two ways. First is, if you don't have close friends, or if you don't have somebody in your circle who loves Jesus, who walks with you in this journey of life as a Christian, I'd like to suggest that you begin to seek out a few of them. And if you're not in one already, I'd like to even suggest further that you begin to take part or be a part of a small group in the church. Now, some of you have more intimate non-Christian friends that you do Christian friends. And if you honestly evaluate yourselves, you know that they are not leading you to Jesus, right? By the way, if you are not in a small group yet, we encourage you to sign up after the service. You can ask our ushers and they'll help you plug into a group. Now, I hope that you will be selective in choosing your friends. And if you have friendships that are dragging you down, heed the call of the words from the Proverbs. Now, secondly, also want to challenge you to examine yourself as to what kind of friend you are. What kind of a friend are you? You see, more than likely, God has already put people in your life who need you or who deserve your friendship. But they need you to be the kind of friend that you need to be, who will lead them to Christ. They need you to hurt with them when they hurt. Well, to say things that needs to be said in a way that will help them become better. They need you to bring out the best in them. If you become that kind of a friend, if you are willing to take on that path, then it won't be long when you will find yourself involved in friendships that will reward you for the rest of your life. Why? Because every day we choose a way. Our friends can lead us either in the path that draws us closer to Christ or far away from Him. So here's a question, or two questions actually. Number one, who are your friends? Secondly, what kind of a friend are you? Who are your friends? How are they influencing you? How are they leading you to make decisions? And then secondly, what kind of a friend are you? So, words, friendships. The third is this. We want to talk about the path we are taking in relationship to our time. Now, in Proverbs chapter 30, a guy named Agur writes this. He says in verse 24, "Four things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise." And he gives one example. He says, "Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer." So Agur says here, have little strength. Yet they store up food in the summer. So ants work today for tomorrow. Or putting it in another way, the ant knows what time it is in life. There are different kinds of people in the world who looks at time in certain ways. There are people who live in the past. They're the kind of people who enjoy the picture and not the journey. They drive through life looking at the rear view mirror all the time. And there are others also who live in the present. And their quote of choice is, "This is the accepted time. Now is the day to enjoy yourself." And they live for today as if there's no tomorrow. There are also others who live in the future. And the theme of their life is from the song from Annie, "Tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you, tomorrow." Or they would sing from that song from The Wizard of Oz, "Somewhere over the rainbow. After I get married, or after I graduate, or after I have the baby, or after, and then." Diba? Now, in and of itself, we do need to learn from the past, right? And we need to enjoy the present. And it's not wrong to dream about tomorrow. But we don't live there when it comes to how we handle time. Now, Agur shows to us three implicit lessons that we can learn from the ants when it comes to the use of our time. Okay, first is this. He says, the ant knows what time it is. It has an instinct to prepare itself. So one way to look at it is this. Agur says the ants are working in the summer in order to prepare for the winter that lies ahead. Winter is different for different people. Perhaps your winter will be a sickness that you always thought you'd never have. Perhaps your winter will be a ministry or a business or a work that turns sour and all your dreams are dashed. It could be that your winter will be your children. The children that you once brought into the world with so much hope and joy, and they turn your back on everything that you value. And it says here that the ant prepares for the winter because the truth is this, for all of us, winter is coming. Diba? You see, it's harder to combat a problem when the problem is already staring at you. So what does it look like for you? What does the Lord want you to use your time when it comes to preparation for the upcoming winters of life? The ant has this instinct to prepare. Now, second lesson we can see here is the ant knows what time it is, and he will take advantage of it. Do you know that ants attend picnics? While you are sitting back, drinking your iced tea and, eating your hamburger, the ants are carrying off the sugar one grain at a time. And if you don't watch them, they're going to be back for the potatoes as well. The ants have little strength, it says, yet they use the little that they have and they take advantage of it. They don't whine and complain and say, if only I were bigger, I'd be able to gather more. If only I'm stronger, I'd be able to carry that big piece of corn that fell off. They are small, but they find ways to take advantage of what they have. They prepare, they take advantage, and a third lesson we can learn is that the ants know what time it is. It has the sense to see opportunity. Thomas Edison once said, opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. Titana, kapoy kayo. A lot of times we don't see opportunities when they come our way. Somebody once asked Winston Churchill, they asked him, what most prepared you to lead Great Britain through World War II? If you know your history, you know that during that time, Great Britain virtually stood alone against the Nazis. And so when he was asked, what prepared you to lead Great Britain during World War II? Here's how Churchill responded. He said, it was the time I repeated a class in grade school. And the questioner said, you mean you flunked a grade? And here's how Churchill answered it. He said, I never flunked in my life. I was given a second opportunity to get it right. Now, I've had conversations with a lot of people, and I'm sure you have, about how radically COVID has affected our use of time. There are some people who have never worked harder in their lives before. They're running overtime hours in the medical field, the teachers, the nurses, the doctors. They have very little free time because they're so busy. Or we hear about parents who are trying to work from home while simultaneously trying to handle the constant interruptions of kids, trying to keep them on track with online school. Right? We have people who are sick and we have to take care of them. And so there's one side, people have become busier than normal. And there's also the other extreme. For those who have been laid off or who lost their job or just still waiting for the companies to open up, to reopen. And suddenly they find themselves with so much time to burn, right? They now realize that you can watch an entire Netflix series in a single day, right? Or you can play a game for hours and hours without taking a bath for days. But here's the thing. Whether you're in a season of busyness or you're in a season where you have plenty of time to spare, whatever your season you are in today, we must learn to value knowing the times and seeing the opportunities to benefit from it. As Christians, it would be tragic if we see the opportunity after it has passed us by. Think about it this way. You're very busy, crazy busy, or you have too much time on your hands. What opportunity is God opening up for you during this season of your life? So we see three simple lessons from the ant. It's that we have to take advantage, we need to prepare, and we need to see opportunity when it comes to our time. Now, for some of you, you might need to create a to-do list. For others, maybe you might need a stop-doing list. Right? Think about it. Maybe the to-do list has something to do with establishing your habits when it comes to spiritual things like Bible reading and prayer, or connecting with fellow Christians who are walking with you in this journey of life. Some of us needs a stop doing list. It might be to deliberately disconnect from things that drag us down. It might be social media, or it might be a bad habit, or it might be even friends who you know are leading you away from Christ. So the question for reflection is this: what is it that you can prepare for, take advantage of, or benefit from the opportunity when it comes to the use of your time? Because every day we choose a way. We make hundreds of different choices. They are not random, disconnected decisions, but over time they form a road a well-beaten path. And pretty soon, there ends up for each and every one of us a way that we use our words, a way that we relate to our friends, and a way that we handle time. And Proverbs teaches us, don't let the season go wasted. Choose wisely the way to go. Amen? Now, as I end here, I want to introduce a 31-day challenge that I'm going to invite all of you to take a part of. Okay? Now, I'm absolutely convinced, as we take a look at this series, I'm convinced that what you get out of this series has less to do with what is preached here on the weekend sermons than what you do in between the weekends, whether you're crazy busy or you have lots of time in your hands. Now, I'd love for every one of you to participate in what we call the Wisdom Challenge. The Wisdom Challenge, okay? There are 3 parts of it. The first part is simply this, to read. Read, okay? There are 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, and there are roughly 31 days each month. So the read part is simply this. You read 1 chapter of Proverbs that corresponds to the day of the month. So we begin the Wisdom Challenge tomorrow. Tomorrow is January 11, right? So you read Proverbs 11, diba? So that's easy, right? So over this 31 days or this series, you will have the opportunity to actually read the entire book of Proverbs. Now, I ask you to join me in taking this Wisdom Challenge. It simply involves just reading a chapter of Proverbs a day. Okay, so it's simple, right? Just look at the calendar and you will know what reading assignment is for that day. If it's February 2, so you read Proverbs 2. So that's the first one, read. Second is this, write. Write, okay? Now, here's something about Proverbs. Proverbs is actually a challenging book to read because, when you read Proverbs, you will see in each chapter some 20, 30 verses. And Proverbs is really not intended to be digested in bulk. For a proverb to really begin to work in your life, in your hearts, and in your minds, you must think about it. You must let it marinate. You must reflect on the verse. So after reading the assignment, the chapter for that day, here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick out 1 or 2 verses that strike you the most. 1 or 2 verses that you see relates to you. And here's what you do. I want you to just physically write the verse down. Whether it's going to be on a 3x5 index card or whether it's in your journal or on a post-it, write it down. Write down that verse for the day and then put it somewhere that you can see. Maybe in front of your computer or in the kitchen. And in the moments of your day, take a pause and read the verse, think about it, reflect on it. Let the Holy Spirit speak to you. Okay? So pick that verse that applies to you and write it down by hand. Ang uban mong kunona, ako lang i-type eh. Okay? So read, write, and the third is this. Share it. Share it with someone. For families or friends, you might do it at the end of the day or over the dinner table. You can simply ask each other, which proverb did you choose today? People in small groups, or you might want to text or message one another. Just share it. You might just, if you're a little bit timid, you can just share the verse. Or you can share how the verse impacts you or what you learned from it. Okay? Now, for the small groups, this would be great for conversation, diba? Especially in your GCs. Don't wait for the small group to meet. For instance, if your schedule is on Thursday, don't wait for Thursday. The Wisdom Challenge starts tomorrow. And most of you have a GC, so post your Proverbs verse for that day and just let the ball roll. Okay? So it really has to do with a road we choose. That's the wisdom challenge. Read one chapter a day. Write 1 or 2 verses on somewhere. 3, share it with someone. Okay, Ra? Are you up for it? Can you see the hands of those who are up for it? Okay, I go, wow. Now, I believe in the next 31 days, what you do in between the weekends will have a lasting impact in your life because it really has to do with the road we choose. Because every day, we choose a way. 2021 has just come, right? It will be a great opportunity to take new paths that will help build us, to help us in our Christian walk. Amen. Now, some people say that life is all about the journey and not the destination. I say that life is about the journey and it's also about the destination. Because roads lead to places. Roads lead somewhere. So devote yourself to the way of wisdom. It is never too late to choose the right path. Amen. And by God's grace, when we do that, we will see a well-worn path where we will find the blessing and the leading of the Lord to where He wants us to go. Amen.